What's good, YouTube? It's your boy DJ LiftOFF with the JP Way, and you don't want to miss this flight. Now, if you click this video, just know that you are not alone. I personally struggled to learn how to scratch for years. I even quit a few times, and what got me through it was a lot of patience and a lot of determination and a lot of practice and practice and practice. Now, in this video, what I want to make easier for you is how you are actually practicing and making sure that your techniques are right and that you're just giving yourself the best shot to learn how to scratch. Let's hop right into it. All right, DJs, we're gonna hop right into this with tip number 1, which is going to be your hand position on your platter or your jog wheel. Now, I have this thing called the 8, 9, 10 rule, and essentially all that means is you're gonna start with your hand right on the 9 o'clock. So if you think about a clock, you have the 12, the 6, and the 9. So first, we're just gonna start right on this 9 o'clock, and we're gonna do a couple baby scratches. And essentially all I'm trying to do is see, is this position right here comfortable for my hand? You never want to have too much arm movement in your scratching. Like, you don't want to be pushing all the way forward or feeling like your shoulder actually moving. A lot of scratching is in your hand and in your wrist motion, especially when you're doing faster scratches. It's a lot in your wrist versus using your entire arm. Now, if it doesn't feel comfortable at 9 o'clock, go ahead and move that up to 10 o'clock. Try that. See if that feels any more comfortable. Also try 8 o'clock as well and see if that works for you for your comfortability as well. Then tip number 2 is going to be the height of your hand, whether it's high or low. Now, I tend to be a little bit more lower, and what I mean by that is this will be considered high, this will be considered low. Okay, so in my 9 and 10 o'clock position, I'm usually pretty close. My hand is pretty close to the platter, and that's what's most comfortable for me. But maybe for you, you like to have yours raised up just a little bit. And honestly, the more you raise it, what I've noticed in the past is the more I raise my hand, I'm able to do quicker scratches. So if you are struggling with scratching faster, maybe try lifting up your hand just a little bit and see if that helps a little bit. Also vice versa, maybe actually dropping it down will help you. Everybody is going to be different. So just because one DJ does it one way doesn't mean you have to do it the exact same way. Everybody is going to be different. Everyone's going to have a different comfortability. Now, this takes me right into tip number 3, which is going to be your hand pressure on your platter. Now, this is especially more critical for those who have turntables, because as you can see here, if I press down on this platter too hard, I'm actually going to make my motor come to a complete stop. And this is exactly what you don't want to do. If I start lightening up my pressure, you can see it returns to the normal motion. Now, if you're using a controller, this also applies to you, because essentially if you ever are going to be using a turntable, you just want to already have that kind of light hand pressure onto the platter. And not only that, I found that it's helped me with speed, it's helped me with control just by being a little bit lighter on the platter. So with that said, try lightening up the pressure that you're actually putting on your platter or your controller. And maybe you can do that by using 2 fingers instead of if you usually use 4 fingers. Maybe I've even seen some DJs use 1 finger, maybe just a middle finger to kind of lighten up that pressure. Sometimes it does depend on how fast you're trying to scratch or how fast you're trying to scratch in that particular moment. But definitely whether you use 4 fingers, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, just make sure you're holding that platter or practicing on your controller as well by holding as lightly as possible. Now, moving on to tip number 4, you're going to want to perfect the baby scratch and the scribble scratch. So here's your baby scratch here, and then your scribble scratch. So baby and scribble together. And the importance of really perfecting the baby scratch and the scribble scratch, I'm going to even go ahead and say more so the baby scratch, is it's going to really allow you to figure out what's most comfortable as far as that hand position, as far as how high you want your hand, all of these different things. It's really going to allow you to understand those fundamentals, because as you start moving on to the chirp, the crab, the flare, all of these other different types of scratches or these different types of techniques, you're gonna wanna understand the fundamentals first. So you really wanna perfect that baby scratch, really perfect your hand motion, really perfect your hand movement, dropping that platter on the one, all of those good fundamental techniques before you start moving on to other scratches. Now for tip number 5, we're gonna move down to the crossfader. Now, of course, it's very important to understand and be comfortable with your crossfader if you're going to learn how to scratch. Now, the most important thing that I'm gonna say is just as important as it is to understand your hand placement on the platters or your jog wheels, it's just as important to be comfortable on the crossfader. Now, for something as simple as, let's say, a chirp scratch, how I teach it is I like to have my thumb right here and I press with my middle finger and I kind of do this as I do a chirp scratch. And if you don't know what a chirp scratch is, it's just like this. So I kind of have the back of my hand where my pinky is kind of facing flat down. So if I was to do this first by just putting my pinky down like this, then I kind of cup my hands into a C. This is how I feel is most comfortable for me when I'm scratching, but that doesn't mean that's going to be most comfortable for you. So figuring out your comfortability on the crossfader is going to be very important. It could be with your index finger, it could be with your middle finger. There's all different types of ways. You might even want to actually hold your crossfader with your index finger and your thumb like this and hold on to it the entire time. This could be with your index or this could be with your middle finger. I've seen more DJs actually hold it like this. And it makes sense as well. So definitely go ahead and figure out what's most comfortable for you as far as your crossfader and holding it. This is going to play a large role in your ability to learn more scratches. So that's definitely going to be a very, very important thing to be comfortable with. Tip number 6 is going to be to actually play around with the feeling adjust on your mixer or your controller. I'm not personally sure how many controllers have the ability to change that feeling adjust. I know some mixers like my SE2, you can change your tension in the crossfader with, I believe it comes with a particular tool that you can use and you can insert it into your crossfader somewhere and you can kind of tighten it or loosen it. Other mixers like this one, the S9, you actually have a feeling adjust right on the mixer. So by turning that to the right, you're gonna make it more tighter. By turning it to the left, you're gonna make it a little bit more loose. So that's gonna be another role in how comfortable you are with your crossfader. So I like to keep my crossfader pretty loose as I'm moving back and forth. I think most DJs like it to be pretty loose. If it's too tensioned or if it's too tight, it's gonna be hard to kind of have like that free flow bounce, especially when you're doing things like crab scratches or if you're just trying to do very, very quick movements. So you definitely want to keep that more towards the lighter side, but definitely play around with it so you can find your sweet spot. And then lastly, tip number 7 is going to be to practice, practice, practice. I know I always say that, and the most important thing about practicing is you want to be practicing correctly. So I know this video focuses on kind of changing your hand positions and figuring out what's most comfortable for you. So every time you figure out something that's kind of comfortable, practice doing that for a little bit before you just keep changing, because at the end of the day, although you do want to be practicing correctly, you do want to be practicing. And if you're just changing how you're holding the crossfader or changing your hand movements and kind of discouraging yourself and saying none of this is working for me, you'll never get it down. So once you feel like a little bit of comfortability or even a lot of comfortability, keep trying to practice that particular way, and I promise you after a while it will start coming together. Like, I personally struggled for a long time to learn how to scratch. I quit multiple times. It was a very, very rough time for me learning how to do it, but all it took for me was a lot of consistency, a lot of practice. Once I did figure out what worked for me easiest, I kept just doing it every single day. Even if you can't practice every day, a couple times a week is enough, but you want to be practicing, and you want to be practicing what's comfortable for you.